Hello everyone. Welcome to lecture 3.2, The Origins of Music. In this lecture, we will talk about two perspectives of the origins of music. One is biological, the other is cultural. So there are some debates and arguments about the origins of music. For example, music's age and ubiquity seem to argue that its origins are biological. But the diversity of musical practices around the world seems to argue instead that its origins are cultural. Despite evidence that culture plays a critical role in shaping aesthetic responses to music, something about the ease and power of musical communication makes it difficult for people to imagine that their own fundamental responses to sound are not universally shared. This phenomenon is called ethnocentrism, which means we cannot help but to impose our culturally grounded perspectives, biases, and thoughts on other people's lifestyles and ideologies. This divide between perceived naturalness and actual cultural dependency is precisely what allows music such tremendous force. It transmits messages about culture and identity while feeling direct and unmediated. So, from these arguments, it seems that we have a common sense that music has its own biological foundation across all cultures, among all human beings, but also it's shaped by different cultural and social structures. In this reading, the nature of music from a biological perspective, it provides some viewpoints on the musicality or musical ability as a biological function. Much musical cognition research has focused on the musical properties that are deemed universal as investigators search for the fundamental underpinnings of musical thought and behavior. Common principles may underlie the world's diverse musical cultures. These principles may also be guided by innate mechanisms. So, in this reading, it argues that there are certain commonalities underlie uh, all the world's diverse musical cultures. And also, these principles may also be guided by some innate mechanisms that's innate in our human nature, and this is biologically grounded. Throughout human history and across all cultures, individuals have produced and enjoyed music. Music has emerged spontaneously and in parallel in all known human societies. So, the musical phenomenon is so prevalent in all humans and across all cultures, even though there's no communication between these cultures and communities, but music still emerge as part of social cultural form in all known human societies. Therefore, we can reasonably argue that there must be something innate in human beings to make music and to create a musical form to express us as a human. However, there are also other voices that favor music as a cultural convention. The following arguments is drawn from this reading across a cross-cultural investigation of the perception of emotion in music, psychophysical and cultural cues. Some theorists favor an enculturation explanation that musical meaning is determined exclusively by cultural convention, such as Blackie, Field and Kale, and Walker. These theorists may acknowledge certain universalities in music, such as octave equivalence, but they assume that the interpretation of emotional meaning in music is determined solely by incorporation to a specific tonal system. Quoted from Field and Kale, all musical sound structures are socially structured in two senses. They exist through social construction and they acquire meaning through social interpretation. So based on these arguments, we see that these theorists they acknowledge there are some certain commonalities, universities in music to some degree, but beyond that, more of that, they argue that if we want to interpret the music, we want to acquire meaning from the music, it can solely be dependent on incorporation to certain tonal system, to certain culture. So all the musical sounds are shaped by its social cultural constructions. Much ethnomusicological research is rooted in the assumption that differences in musical understanding exist between cultural insiders and outsiders, a contrast often referred to as the amic-etic dichotomy. In general, it is possible to get to know the music of the other, although one will never know it as well as the insider, the amic, the native. So, from this amic-etic dichotomy perspective, we can see that if we are incorporated in certain culture, we always know the music of our own better than an outsider. And also we can get to know the music of the other of other people, of other cultures, but we will never know it as well as the insiders. So there is a distinction or the dichotomy between the insider and outsiders of musical understanding, which is structured by the cultures. Modern composers argue that musical preferences are culture specific and can be modified by exposure alone. So they argue that the musical preferences are culture specific and it can be modified by the environment, by your surroundings. So if a person is exposed or immersed to a specific musical style for a long time, it can change their preferences or their tastes of the music. So this is, which means the musical preferences is purely inculturated. It's culturally shaped and it's learned from the external world. Musicologists typically study music as a social construct that varies from culture to culture, rejecting cross-cultural requests for universals underlying the diversity. So we can see for some researchers, they study music as a social construct that varies from culture to culture. And for other researchers, like we discussed before, for the researchers who are more interested in the biological foundations of music, they tend to find the thing or the principles underpinning the music across the world. So it's different ideology, different research thoughts that's guiding the researchers to do different works regarding the origins of music. So the question is music a universal language? In ancient times, since the ancient Greeks, many philosophers have posited that music expresses universal principles or truth. such as Pythagoras' harmony of the spheres. And also, Longfellow explicitly stated that music is the universal language of mankind. So in ancient times, um, especially for the Western philosophers, they tend to argue that music is a universal language, and uh, and it's something that's shared by all human beings. Maybe so now we can see that their perspective is somehow ethnocentrism, because they only have the knowledge of their own culture, of their own world, and they generalized this commonality, this principle to all the world music, which might which turn out to be not that correct. The modern views. Nowadays, we tend to think music as a universal phenomenon and a shared capacity, but its structures and meanings are not universally comprehensible. So it has to be inculturated, it has to be social culturally structured for us to acquire the meaning of the music. Ethnomusicologists have compiled a rather small list of near universals that appear to inform much of the world's music. And there are a few cross-cultural social contexts in which music appears to play an important role. So here are the lists that the ethnomusicologists compiled for about the near universals of music. At the lower level, for the musical structures, the near universals include octave, or octave equivalence is 2-1, and the prevalence of a perfect fifth, 3-2. So, due to their studies, it seems that the use of octave and perfect fifth, is somehow universal in all the music across all cultures. So in the music of all cultures, the octave and the perfect fifth are the basic intervals that's used in all the scales. So there are some possible explanations. So, for the musical ratios or the tuning systems, so we have a preference. It seems that human beings have a preference for the simple ratios, which means the denominators is small. Okay, so and the simplest ratios is the octave is 2-1, and 3-2, perfect fifth. So, in the Western musical theory, this is considered the consonant. Uh, the consonant intervals tend to have smaller musical ratios, and if we consider the overtones or the harmonies, it reduces the beating in the higher frequencies. So we're not going to look into the details of this phenomenon because it belongs to the physics of acoustics, but get to know that the like all human beings have a similar sense of consonance and dissonance. Um, as is something that's given here, but also we need to notice that not all cultures use scales that duplicate at the octave. So there is always the exceptions. So here we are only talking about maybe some mean cultures we are thinking about, but if we really consider all the communities, all musical cultures, this condition may not hold. Okay. The next, most scales have 7 ± 2 discrete pitches, which means 5 to 9 pitches. So this might be resulted from the limitations of our working memories. So if you know there is certain limitations of the chunking of our working memories, it seems we can only remember 5 to 9 numbers or things at once. So this might limit the number of discrete pitches in musical scales. The next most common intervals tend to be small. So it might be the smaller intervals are easier to comprehend and it's easier to sing, and the larger intervals are difficult for human beings maybe to reach, or yeah. So and another common phenomenon is that most scales apportion the octave unequally. So this is related to the tuning, the tuning system, the tuning of the scales, and there are many ways to divide the octave, and this the unequal portion of the octave produces intervallic variety that facilitates perception, memory, coherence, transposition. The next, sounds can be transposed to a different pitch level. So this is the phenomenon called relative pitch perception. So it seems the relative perception, the relative pitches are more commonly used in the musical context across all cultures. Although we have the absolute pitch recognition, but in terms of music perception and cognition, the relative pitch system is more commonly used, which means we can freely transpose a tune to different pitch levels. So for near universals at higher level, which relates to the musical functions, there are some near universals across all human cultures. Singing and dancing are ubiquitous. So it seems all cultures, they developed their own system or their own ways of doing singing and dancing. So singing and dancing is ubiquitous in all cultures. So this might be it enhances social cohesion and resulting from entrainment and promotes empathy. So music or singing and dancing provides certain social functions in terms of our humanities. The next, cultures use musical instruments of enormous variety, but built on fundamental principles. So this means that nearly all cultures, they invented their own musical instruments. So there is always musical the instruments to play music, the physics of sound production, besides the voice. But voice is definitely a kind of musical instrument. But nearly all cultures, people find different physical objects to play music. So musical instruments is prevalent in nearly all human societies. Some music in every known culture is paused and metric. So it seems that um, the rhythm is prevalent in music. So in certain cultures, the music they may not have harmony. They may not have the pitches, the discrete pitches, and the melody, but nearly all music are paused or metric in certain ways. So this may be related to the universal phenomenon of entrainment. So entrainment is a way to coordinate people's actions when they work together. So this universal phenomenon is not musical. It is not musically dependent, and it's not solely attributed to to the musical context. So maybe because of the human nature of entrainment, we create the music in a positive way. The next, repetition plays a significant role at multiple levels of musical structure. In previous lectures, we talked about the role the repetition played in music, and we also introduced YouTube video talking about why we really like repetition in music. So it seems that repetition can be found in many cultures, musics. So it may be related to the entrainment, the memory, and pleasure, and also how we perceive and comprehend music, about the how we understand how, and this is also about the efficiency of a communication. If we use repetition, it promotes our comprehension of the music to some extent. And the last one, musicking is used in infant care, healing, dancing, love, mourning, warfare, processions, and ritual. So this is some social functions of 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 music, which means music provides the humanity values besides an auditory experience. So it's used in many aspects in our daily lives, in our social lives, such as infant care, healing, dancing, and love, mourning, warfare, and the cultural rituals. So music is music infiltrates nearly all aspects of our human life, especially in terms of humanities. And this may be explained as music's ability to evoke emotion. So as music has a strong potential to evoke emotion, it's emotionally based, and so that it contributes in a way that promotes the values in the humanity aspects. So this is all for this lecture. Thanks for listening.